The room was colder than it should have been. Jasmine Crockett walked in with her head held high, but she could feel the weight in the air. Closed-door meetings like this didn't happen without reason, and the reason was clear the moment she saw Justice Elena Kagan seated at the center, flanked by a handful of senior officials who barely made eye contact. She had known something was coming. After her most recent floor speech, where she'd exposed a hidden clause in a federal contract benefiting a private defense contractor with ties to a senator's family, media had exploded. Some called her brave, others called her reckless. But behind the headlines, something else had stirred. Fear. Justice Kagan began slowly, voice measured. She spoke of tradition, balance, and the fragile dignity of the institutions they serve. She never raised her voice, but every sentence carried an edge. "You're talented, Congresswoman," she said, "but you're pushing too far. There's a reason the system resists change at certain speeds. You could burn yourself out, or worse, be removed from the work entirely." The words were soft, but the message was a knife. Jasmine didn't interrupt. She sat still, absorbing every calculated phrase. Behind Kagan's legal authority, Jasmine sensed something older, establishment fear. Not fear of her personally, but of what she represented. A new kind of leadership that didn't ask for permission. Another senator chimed in, carefully choosing his words. "Some of us worry that your tone creates friction where collaboration is possible. We're offering guidance, not punishment." But Jasmine had heard this kind of guidance before. Warnings dressed as mentorship, threats wrapped in smiles. Then came the shift. They offered her access, exclusive briefings, leadership opportunities, private donor support. But there was a condition. Step back from the more sensitive topics. Stop asking questions about defense budgets, about international investments, about the judges with property portfolios linked to foreign-backed firms. And then came the final line from Kagan, soft but firm. "There's a reason some doors are closed, Congresswoman. Be careful which ones you try to kick down." It was the closest thing to a threat Jasmine had ever heard from someone in a robe. She looked around the room. No one else spoke. No one defended her. It was a silent show of hierarchy, reminding her who held the power. But Jasmine didn't reply. Not yet. She simply nodded once, rose from her chair, and walked out. They believed they had warned her, but Jasmine wasn't walking away shaken. She was walking away sharpened. Because when systems issue warnings, it means they've already begun to crack. Jasmine returned to the chamber 2 days later. No cameras, no press. Just the same cold room, the same wary eyes, and the same expectation that she would apologize, soften, or simply back down. Justice Kagan sat at the head of the long table again, looking composed, even cordial. She nodded toward Jasmine, as if giving her a second chance to fall in line without fuss. But Jasmine didn't sit this time. She stood beside the table, calm and steady, and placed a slim black folder in front of her. "I appreciate the space, Justice," she began, her voice even, clear. "But let's be honest about what this is. This isn't a warning. It's a shield. Not for me, but for those who are afraid of the truth getting too close." The room tensed. "I was told to stay in my lane," she said. "But the problem is, corruption doesn't stay in its lane. It seeps. It spreads. It sits in rooms like this, hoping we're too polite to call it out." She opened the folder. Page after page was placed on the table. Jasmine didn't shout. She didn't dramatize. She read names, dates, bank wires, and excerpts from internal memos, one from the DOJ marked confidential, outlining a series of judicial conflicts of interest that had been quietly buried. Another was an email chain between a real estate lobbying firm and a retired federal judge, with a CC to an active committee member. The language was vague, but the intent wasn't. It spoke of favorable rulings, shared interests, and ensuring compliance through influence. No one spoke. Then came the whistleblower statements, 3 of them. Anonymous but backed by independent verification. They described a slow erosion of integrity in property seizure cases, pushed by external lobbyists influencing federal appointments. Justice Kagan's face didn't change, but her fingers curled tighter around the edge of the desk. Jasmine continued, voice steady. "None of this was supposed to reach public light. and it wouldn't have if I'd taken your advice and stayed quiet. She looked each person in the room in the eye. I know some of you aren't corrupt. I know some of you want to believe in this system, but belief means nothing without courage. Then her voice softened, but grew even sharper. I didn't run for this seat to play it safe. I didn't swear an oath to protect power. I swore it to protect people. She held up one page in the DOJ memo and said, "This document names 2 people in this room. I won't read them aloud yet, but know that the people deserve better than silence and secrecy." Justice Kagan finally spoke. "You're threading a dangerous line, Congresswoman." Jasmine turned to her. "So are you, Justice." A long pause fell over the room. Then Jasmine gave her final words, the ones that would echo far beyond those walls. "This seat doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the people who trusted me to speak when others won't, and I won't betray them just to make silence more comfortable." She didn't wait for permission. She gathered her folder, turned, and walked out. This time no one stopped her, because in that moment everyone in the room realized something had shifted. Jasmine didn't just reject the warning. She made them listen to the truth. And in a place where truth is usually negotiated, she made it non-negotiable. The first story broke less than 3 hours after Jasmine walked out of the chamber. By evening, it wasn't just one article. It was everywhere. News sites from New York to Nairobi carried headlines about the memo, the confrontation, and the woman who refused to back down. Clips from previous hearings surfaced, with analysts now connecting the dots. Jasmine's earlier questions, once dismissed as disruptive, now seemed prophetic. The DOJ memo, redacted, grainy, but undeniably real, was circulated across encrypted servers and public timelines alike. Leaks had a strange way of confirming things the system hoped would stay buried. Support poured in, louder than Jasmine expected, not just from activists or progressives, but from legal scholars, ethics professors, and retired judges who'd long felt the shift happening under the surface. She was no longer just a congresswoman. She had become a symbol, and symbols came with pressure. Justice Kagan released a polished statement, void of emotion. "We respect the principles of transparency and the right to raise concerns." But within a week, she quietly recused herself from 3 cases involving development firms tied to the memo. No explanation, no press conference. Meanwhile, Jasmine's colleagues on the committee weren't spared. The ones who had sat silent during the confrontation now faced questions of their own. Why hadn't they spoken up? Did they know? Did they benefit? Some doubled down in defense of tradition. Others scrambled to distance themselves. But none of them escaped the sudden wave of public scrutiny. Even those who had considered themselves untouchable began holding emergency briefings behind closed doors. Jasmine, however, remained quiet. She kept working, introducing new bills, attending hearings, walking the same halls but with sharper stares trailing her every move. Reporters followed. Cameras waited. Some wanted another viral moment. Others wanted her to stumble. But she didn't give them what they wanted. Because for her, this was never about spectacle. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't ego. It was truth. And truth, she knew, never walked out of fire without a little ash. That week, her staff received dozens of interview requests, all denied. She turned down 2 major magazine covers. She declined late-night show appearances. When a famous podcast offered her the entire hour to tell her side, she simply replied, "I already did." Then came the message. It arrived late on a rainy night, tucked into an envelope slid under her office door. No name, no sender. Just a single line, typed in bold. "Stay alert. You've started something bigger than you think." Jasmine held it for a long moment. She folded the note, placed it in her desk drawer, and locked it. Then she got back to work. The community center was packed, not with cameras or campaign banners, just people. Families, teachers, union workers, young students with notebooks in their laps. Jasmine stood at the front of the room in a simple blouse and jeans. No teleprompter, no talking points, just presence. The town hall wasn't meant to be historic. It was just another stop in a long list of outreach meetings. But the energy was different. People didn't come to see a politician. They came to see someone who had stood up when it mattered most. A hand went up in the front row. A young girl, maybe 10 years old, wearing oversized glasses and holding a spiral notebook. "Weren't you scared?" she asked softly, "when the judge warned you?" The room fell quiet. Jasmine smiled, but it wasn't a political smile. It was real, earnest. "Yes," she said, "I was scared, but I was more scared of what happens when good people stay silent." The crowd didn't erupt. They didn't need to. The applause that followed was slow, steady, and heartfelt. Because it wasn't about admiration, it was about recognition, about courage that reminded everyone of something they had almost forgotten, their own voice. The moment didn't go viral. No headline captured it, but someone in the back recorded it quietly and posted it with the caption, "The power isn't in the seat, it's in the stand." In classrooms across the country, Jasmine's congressional speech is studied now. Law professors call it a turning point in modern judicial accountability. Her quote, "I'm not here to protect silence, I'm here to protect truth," is printed on posters in high school civics rooms and carried on handmade signs during student marches. College radio stations replay the audio of her voice during late-night programs. Activists use it to open conferences. Even those who once dismissed her now acknowledge the ground shifted that day. And Justice Kagan, she never comments, never defends, never corrects the record. She simply carries on, but quieter, smaller. Because the courtroom never forgot, and neither did the country. Jasmine Crockett didn't scream, she didn't storm, she didn't play their game. She flipped the board, and by doing so, she lit a path, not for power, but for truth.